sometimes we have practiced things that are not comfortable a lot, that we're trying to get used to it, or some people even get used to it. And I will explain what I mean. As believers, we're people that are born into love. We are people that are born into the family of God. And the Bible said there is no greater love than this, than a man laid down his life for his brethren. So the place we're born into is the place with the highest form of love. And that is the reason why Paul was praying for the Ephesians church. He said that they will understand what is the length, the breadth, the depth, the height, to know the love of God that passes all understanding. In other words, it is actually difficult to comprehend the love of God with a natural mind, because it is the highest form of love. People can get it when someone is being killed and the same person is saying, "Forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." And that is exactly what Jesus Christ did. You know, Peter came to Jesus. He said, "How many times must my brother offend me in a day, and I have to forgive?" He said, "Is it 7 times?" Jesus Christ said, "No, it's not 7 times. It's 70 times, 7 times. That is 490 times." It's literally impossible for someone to offend you 490 times. So what is Jesus saying? He said, no matter how many times you are offended, he said that forgive. And he was telling the disciples, he said that the first and the most important commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart. And the second one is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, what is Jesus saying? John was saying that it is not possible for you to say you love God and you don't love your brother. In other words, the love of the brethren, the love of other human beings, that is the love of God. So Paul said that and John rather says that when we claim that we have fellowship with God and we walk in darkness, he said we lie. In other words, and by fellowship now, he's talking about active fellowship with God, that we have an active and working relationship with God, and we walk in hatred towards others. He said it is a lie. It is not possible, because God is light. If you are in the light and you radiate light, there is no way you are going to walk in darkness. Think about the fact that you're walking and light is in your body. You will not walk in darkness. And you see, everything in this world can just be classified into two things broadly: either light or darkness. Love is light, offense is darkness. Hatred is darkness. Love is light. And that is the reason why for Jesus Christ, he says that we should walk in love towards one another. He said, "This is how people will know that you are my disciple, if you walk in love, if you have love one for another." In other words, you can't claim to be a Christian and you cannot walk in love. It's two contradictory things to say you are a Christian and you can't get along with people. To say that you are a Christian and you hate someone is as contradictory as saying that you are dead and alive at the same time. That I'm dead, I'm still alive. No, you. So it is not possible, because they are contradictory. Because the life that you have now is a life of God, full of light, full of love, and that is the reason why Jesus Christ, he was saying that on the last day, people will say, God will say, "Well done, of good and faithful servant. When you were hungry, when I was hungry, you fed me." Then I said, "We never saw you. How did we feed you?" They will say, "Because you visit my brethren that were in the prison, because you accommodated my brethren that were homeless, because you give food to the person that cannot feed." Why? Because you, in as much as you did this to one of these little ones, he said you did it to me. Sometimes we don't talk about that aspect of generosity that demonstrates the love of God. But that is what love for God is: showing love to others, even people that don't deserve it. Because that is exactly the love that God showed to us. The Bible said, while we were yet sinners, while we were yet enemies of God, Jesus Christ died for us. In other words, God died for his enemies. Think about that. God literally died for his enemies. And today you see people say they can't get along with people because they offend them. And offenses, they are usually from four sources. Yeah. The first one is either you offend someone, someone offend you, both of you offend each other, or God just wants you to go your separate ways. And a lot of times, as believers, we hold all this as we hold all this to heart, dwelling in them, making our fellowship with God difficult for even people outside to comprehend. Because people cannot comprehend how you say that you are a child of a God that died for sinners, and you can't forgive someone that offends you. As believers, we have been called to forgiveness. Why? Because we have been forgiven much. We have been called to forgive other people. Let me tell you something. The world is dying of hatred. The world is dying of offense. The Bible says that darkness covers the head and gross darkness the people. But the light of the glorious God has shined upon us as believers. We are put in the light, and as sons of light, we are meant to make our light to be visible to the places where there is darkness. You see, I watched the video some time ago, a documentary actually. There's a man that was arrested because he did something wrong. He committed a crime, and the officer that arrested him, they charged him to court the way they're supposed to charge him. And this officer was visiting him every single week. This is a law enforcement agent, was visiting him every single week. And because the officer was visiting him every single week, discussing with him, keeping his company in the prison, and also sharing the word of God with him, the man became born again. And when he was released from prison, he became an evangelist. See how the love of God transformed the life of an ardent criminal to an evangelist. That is what the love of when people see. Jesus Christ said, by this men will know that you are my disciple if you have love for one another. So when we demonstrate love, we reflect the life of God. We show what God actually represents. God represents love. God represents light. God represents love for one another. When we talk about people walking in the spirit, it is not just prophesying, it is not just speaking in tongues. It is walking in love, being intentional about kindness, being intentional about forgiveness. The Bible said that as God has forgiven us, we have been called to forgive other people. So someone offend you, let it go. Call them, greet them, pray with them, pray for them. That is how you show the love of God. Look at Jesus Christ on the cross. The people that were crucified, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. I'm telling you, there is enough hatred in the world. There is enough hatred from nations to nation. But as light, we have been called to demonstrate the love of God to even people that are in gross darkness. Jesus Christ will not step down and walk the street of Lagos anymore. He won't walk the street of any country or any city in the world anymore. We are the Christ. The Christians were first called Christian in Antioch. Why? Because these people were behaving like Christ. They were forgiving like Christ. They were walking like Christ. They were not living in offense towards each other, but rather they are living in forgiveness. One of the reasons why the early church that they multiplied very fast was because of the love that people could see among them. The Bible said there is nobody that says that what they have belongs to them. Why? Everybody sell their stuffs and they share it among the brethren. They were helping each other. The child of someone that needs school fees, they bring their pool together, help the person that is homeless, they make provision for them. And people were seeing this thing, they were seeing this love among them, and people were joining them. People were joining them. Today, what people show is I'm richer than the other person, and people want to also show the power of God in how it can punish another person because the person did not get along with them. No, we have been called to love. We have been called to forgiveness. For us as believers, forgiveness is a responsibility. Why? Because the Bible said in this world we face tribulation. So tribulation will come. Where do you think tribulation will come from? It is through people. People are going to trouble. In fact, Paul told Timothy, he said, everybody that will live a godly life in this world, that they will face persecution. Except you are not going to live a godly life, that's when you will not face persecution. But that people persecute you should not make you to live in offense against them. That's what the Bible is saying. No, it should not make you to live in offense against them. Jesus Christ is a typical example. Stephen is a typical example. They were stoning him, and Stephen was saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. That is the kind of love that we have been called to. The kind of love that does not give up in kindness. The kind of love that does not give up in forgiveness. You know, I met someone some times ago. He was saying that the fight between him and another person, it is when they get to heaven that they are going to settle it. I'm like, what? A Christian? You want God to be settling offense in heaven? God does not have time for that. He has demonstrated love to us. He has demonstrated forgiveness to us. ours is now to live in the reality of what He has made available. I want to tell you something. When you live in offense, when you live in hatred, when you live in envy, when you live in the flesh, you are not living in your comfort zone. You are living outside of your comfort zone. You are living like a fish that is living on land, or you are living like a sheep that is living inside water. That is not your comfort zone. Our comfort zone is in love, because that is where we're born into. We have been born into love. We have been born into life. Our birth in Christ is into the family of God, and there's no greater love anywhere than in the family of love. So when you feel like, oh, me, when people bring it up, I give it to them hot. No, you are not living in your comfort zone. You are just getting comfortable with something that is not comfortable. You are living outside of your comfort zone. You are living where you don't belong. Where you belong is in love, is in living in forgiveness. That is what makes you to rejoice. That is what, see, the apostles, they were being persecuted. And when they are persecuted, they were beaten, right? And they were rejoicing. People could not comprehend. Why? Because that is their comfort zone. That is where they thrive, in forgiving people that offend them. And for us, so that is where we thrive, where we forgive people that offend us, where we let things go for the love of God, where we overcome evil with good, where we love people that hate us, just like God. When people are against us, we don't stay against them, we don't stand against them, but rather we overcome that evil with good. Where people will come to the light of the gospel, just because you walk in love, just because I walk in love towards them. So I want to tell you, it is not the will of God that you are in strife with someone. And I also want to talk about one aspect of strife that is subtle. When people get separated, probably friends, not necessarily because of an offense, but someone get offended. I said there are four ways that offense comes. And the last one is when God actually intends to separate you from one another. And I will say something. Paul called Paul and Barnabas together. And at a point in time, they have to go their separate ways. I'm not saying that that is the will of God or that is not the will of God, but that happens in ministry. But nobody should stay in offense because of that. Why? Because sometimes that is the will of God. Sometimes that is the plan of God, and offense should not come as a result of that. So, in life as believers, what I'm just trying to say is that we have been called to a life of forgiveness. Don't tell yourself that you find it difficult to forgive people, because it is the easiest thing for you to do, because that is your comfort zone. Tell yourself that is my comfort zone. Forgiveness is my comfort zone. That is where we thrive. That is where we prosper. That is where we blossom. That is where we live to the fullness of our life. That is where we live rejoicing. That is where we live full of joy. When people offend us, we forgive. When we offend people, we show them the love of God by apologizing and asking for their forgiveness as well. And we show the love of God to people. That is life. That is the life that God has called us into. As believers, be intentional about walking in love. Be intentional about living away from offenses. Live full in the love of God. Have a fantastic week.